Okay, we are live. Hi, Nishil, how are you?
Hi Divya, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. Thank you so much for getting onto this LinkedIn Live with me. Genuine means a lot. And the topic we're going to be talking today is actually something that's of my interest as well.
Mm-hmm.
Integrating the whole Indian uh, wisdom, I would say, ancient wisdom into the Western, pe- uh, Western modalities. I guess I am not that
Mm-hmm.
of a technical person, but as we get
Mm.
started in here, I would love to learn more first about your journey. How did you get started into this, and then we could take it up from there.
Okay. So I pursued my bachelor's in counseling psychology from MSU Baroda. And so initially I was planning, as we all do, to pursue my master's abroad, perhaps go to Canada. But during the journey, I think in my second year, we had a professor who had done her PhD in Sankhya philosophy. And
Okay.
she was the one who kind of introduced us to the concept of Indian psychology. And simultaneously, in my personal life, my mom was doing a lot of courses on astrology, numerology, vastu, etc. So I was kind of intrigued about those sciences as well. So I think my interest peaked since that time. And then I was I was still figuring out, okay, aage masters, what should I do it in? Then I think by the third year, I kind of finalized, okay, I don't wish to go abroad, because I realized that I'm genuinely curious and interested in pursuing Indian psychology. So it made no sense for me to go abroad. Then I pursued masters in psychology from MSU itself. We had a short course on Indian psychology in the last sem. I think that was not enough for me, because it was just like a small teaser to what actually it can provide, right? So although I was I studied that course, I think what also brought me closer to Indian psychology was that as electives we had the option of choosing from a variety of subjects. And I think throughout the 5 years of bachelor's and masters, I chose Sanskrit as one of my electives every semester. And then we had courses on Mahabharat, we had courses on Upanishad. All of them were in English, and that really piqued me. And I feel that my interest only grew stronger after that. And then when I started practicing as a therapist, I think that is the turning point for me, which pushed me more towards Indian psychology. I felt kind of helpless and incomplete with the kind of therapy I was providing. I felt that it was not um, robust enough to bring transformation in people's life. Yes, it could be helpful with certain scenarios, but if you genuinely want to make a change which is long lasting and help people become self sufficient, basically, uh, I think that was something that was lacking. And I found a lot of answers in Indian philosophy, in Indian psychology. And that is when I decided okay, I want to start integrating it as a part of my practice. Now, for that to happen, I also needed to have a good base in at least one of the six schools of thought of uh, Indian sciences. And then that is when I discovered a course in Vedant Shastra within MSU as well. So I was contemplating on it. I asked my mother as well, because at that point of time I was only going to pursue my diploma in hypnosis, like postgraduate diploma in hypnosis, and that was an evening course. And this masters, like, combining both courses would have been a very hectic thing. But my mother was like, hey, you can do it. If anyone can do it, it's you. So I took that challenge up, and I'm glad that I did, because it was like 2 years of uh, I would say a spiritual journey, a learning journey, all kinds of things in one. And after that, every client that I've taken, like after completing my masters, has been subjected to the new integrated model that I've made for therapy. I've also added astrology to it as a part of my experience and the amount of practice that I've had working with my mom with astrology clients as well. So I've added that as a part of my whole practice because it has helped me streamline my therapeutic approach a lot. Because when we talk about Indian psychology, we are basically talking about integrating the schools of thought within the realm of psychology. Now, philosophy or schools of thought are kind of abstract. So when you want to
Yeah.
when you want to use them uh, in terms of dealing with people, they need to have some sort of linchpin, right? So that
Oh,
is where I feel astrology helped me a lot. So like the birth chart served as a tool for me to dig deeper into a person's behavior or the possible outcomes that can come, and then I use that as a frame of reference to talk about uh, things in their life in respect to let's say Vedant Shastra or Sankhya or Yoga. So that is how I generally practice now.
got it. Thank you so much for that detailed information, Michelle. I want to double tap a bit into understanding. So you talked, about astrology. You talked about the whole Indian psychology piece. I want to
Mhm,
understand how do you use specifically the birth charts,
mhm,
as I would say guiding compass to help your clients in the therapy piece.
mhm.
If you could
uh,
just dive in there a little.
yeah, sure. So first of all, I'll just give like a brief like a guide. I'll guide you through how my sessions look like, and then maybe we can take a few case studies that I've
Yeah.
like prepared for you. So what happens is with any first time call, it's like an introductory call to see if the client and I, if we are on the same page in terms of the services that I offer and what they expect. And then if they go ahead with it, then the first session is generally 1.5 hour or 2 hour long. Usme it's mainly them ranting about whatever they need to rant about, and I generally do not ask a lot of questions. I let it flow as per, there are certain clients who come and they do not talk a lot, and then that is where I probe. And then there are clients who just rant and I let them. One important thing at that point though is that I take their astrological details so that I can prepare their birth chart, and for the next session I have it prepared and I use it as a frame of reference when I have to ask questions. So the second session and every session post that, I have the chart with me, and then if the client is extremely interested and curious in understanding their birth chart, I am vocal about the questions that I am asking, like what is the source of the question. If not, then I just ask the questions. I don't let them know that I am asking because of said reasons,
The birth
right?
chart.
Yeah, because I've had a couple of clients so far jinko they've not been extremely enthusiastic about astrology because of obvious experiences and the malpractice that's going on in the name of astrology. So it's understandable, but eventually what has happened is I have kind of laid breadcrumbs for them to be interested a bit in the science, and then by the amount of sessions that we've had now as together, they have been extremely convinced कि, okay, now how do I align? So because the way I've explained astrology to them has also been very different to how it is generally seen in the market. So I think that has helped them get out of that taboo of astrology. Okay, moving on. I
Just a
still
second.
use, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
before we move on, I just want to double tap here. So you said that the way you explain them, astrology is a bit different versus how it's usually perceived, right? Could you
Mhm.
just explain that difference bit there if you can?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll be able to explain it with reference to a chart if we could put it up. Um,
Yeah, give me 1 second.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the birth chart of one of my clients. And just to give you a brief introduction and the viewers who are watching, these are basically 12 houses. This is your kundli or your birth chart. And as per Indian astrology, it consists of 12 houses, which represent 12 different areas of your life, and 12 zodiacs. So the zodiacs, for each and every individual, they rule these 12 houses in different ways, based on person to person, right? And then you have 9 planets. Now, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto have been mentioned here, but they are only considered as a part of the science as per Western astrology. Indian astrology does not consider them to be impacting your life, right? Okay, so to keep it simple, whenever normal people go to astrologers, obviously there are astrologers who have adapted with time and now they are practicing in a uh, very flexible and modern way. But for astrologers who are used to, giving solutions, they will ask question, like the clients will ask them questions, okay, in terms of my relationship or in terms of my career, what all is possible, XYZ, right? And the astrologer will say that you do this, you do that, you chant this, or you donate this, or maybe stop having this. Everything will be very directive. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, it does, but as a science it's different, right? And for a lot of people, they do not want to be told what to do. The kind of people that we have in India now, like the mentality of Indians now, it has become such that we neither want someone to tell us exactly what to do, nor do we want to be given the control entirely. So if you see like the two opposite poles of the continuum in terms of how traditional astrology works and how traditional psychotherapy works, in the sense that you let the client figure it out, how you are just there and then you let the client figure out how it's supposed to be done. So most people are not satisfied with both the sides. So I've explained astrology as a way to dig deeper within the complexes that people already have. That is the way I have explained astrology to them. And I also tell them very clearly that my approach is not going to be telling you what to do based on your chart. It's not going to be predicting things for you. It's just using the chart to understand where you've come from, what you are going through at this point of time. If you have certain complexes or certain dysfunction in your life, what could be its possible source and how to align it. I work more towards alignment and helping them balance the energy of a particular dysfunction versus telling them what to do which could help them feel better, which is not related to whatever dysfunction they are going through, right? So like for example, if you're talking about an astrological remedy, it may be completely unrelated to what the person is actually going through. It might help them,
Okay.
but it may not be, like, your mind won't be able to make that connection. And for a lot of people it has to be convincing to their mind, so that they are satisfied, okay, yeah, this makes sense to me. So that is where uh, um I've kind of mixed astrology. I've just used astrology as a frame of reference while still continuing on the psychotherapeutic journey with the client, right? So again, coming to this client, let's say, okay, so it might look very confusing. So the first house is the house with the LA initials written, right? Although it says 2, so 2 represents the number of zodiac, which is Taurus. So the zodiac signs start with Aries and end with Pisces, and they are numbered from 1 to 12. And the
Okay.
first house having the number 2 means that it is basically ruled by Taurus. right? Now, I am not going to go in extreme detail with the entire ordeal because I feel it would be very confusing for a lot of people, because there are levels to studying astrology as there are levels to teaching astrology as well. So I'm just going to focus on the dysfunction that the client presented with. So she came with issues of anger and emotional imbalance, specifically related to her marriage. Now, if you look at the seventh house, which is exactly opposite to the first house, it's at the bottom of the screen with MO written. MO is moon, right?
Okay.
Now, for people who are watching and for you, moon basically represents your mind. I think in a lot of scriptures, in a lot of texts that we've read, we've read about it, okay, how moon affects your mind. You have phases of moon and you have phases of mind, right? So the seventh house represents your marriage. It represents your relationship with the world. It represents your possible business partners. Now, if it was balanced, if I would look at it as an astrologer, I would have possibly given her things to do, right? But since
Hmm.
I am a psychotherapist, I have to ask her what is going on. If she's been complaining about issues within her marriage, so it's clear that the seventh house has some or the other issues, some or the other misalignment that is happening, right? Now,
Okay.
that means that the moon is not balanced. And I with the learnings of whatever I've learned from my guru as well, my who teaches astrology, even he talks a lot about alignment. And he always says that, whatever is misaligned within the planet, the same, like, the question is given by the planet and the answer is given by the planet. So if your moon is misaligned, let's say in the seventh house, doing activities related to that, which are the positive, which represent the positive aspect of moon, will help you find balance into it, right? So
Okay.
in terms of looking at her marriage, she said that she's putting efforts and she's not getting results,
Hmm.
right? Now, that again can be viewed in the chart. In what way? If you look at the third house, which has the number 4 in it, right? Number 4 represents the zodiac sign of Cancer, which is ruled by moon. Each and every zodiac sign is ruled by planets, right? So that is how the connection is made. It's basically like a web. You can see a pattern
Hmm.
with their chart where it's coming from, right? And the third house represents efforts that you make. It could be towards anything. Now, since the position of moon, which is a ruler of third, is in the seventh house, it clearly represents that she likes to, or she would tend to put in efforts in the seventh house. But since it's not getting reciprocated, her mind is afflicted. This is just a small example of the the deductions that you can possibly get from the chart. And as I said, aligning for alignment of the moon, either you know traveling could be a good option. um, Cooking is also a good option. Now, how do I prescribe certain things which may seem totally unrelated to them? Like, if I tell her to cook more, she would feel it makes no sense at all, right? But
Yeah.
samne se she told me that she loves traveling, but she's not able to travel right now. So,
Okay.
right, so I would encourage her to travel more. However, make it as a priority, jitna ho sake utna. Even if she's not
Hmm.
traveling to a far off place, at least travel to the
Hmm.
nearest, whatever is possible for her, because that helps. Now, even if we try to explain it psychologically, when you are in movement, your mind tends to be stable, right?
Okay.
And that is something that current movement therapy individuals, practitioners also talk about the connection between mind and body, right? It has always been a part of our scriptures, like since forever, like the connection between mind, body and soul, and anything that affects your body, how it affects your mind, that is something that has always been explored within our scriptures. So that is where this comes from as well. A lot of astrological remedies do represent deeper psychological theories. It's just that we've not been able to explore it that well within our own culture. So now, like, there are people who are exploring it. It's coming up to the surface. It's coming up in terms of research, but it's always existed here, right? If you dig deeper into any Indian science, you'll find it. Um, okay. Um, Coming to her uh, aggression. So what happened was, she said that when we were discussing the source of her aggression, she mentioned her marriage. Then we dug deeper. Then she mentioned her family. Then we dug deeper. Uh, then she mentioned her childhood, which is generally the path that psychotherapy generally takes, right? Almost everything can be traced back to your childhood. Now, how does your astrological chart help you streamline that? Because you can have a possible hypothesis as a therapist कि okay, ये complex father के साथ के relationship से आया है या mother के साथ से आया है वगैरह वगैरह. Now, let's say that I we were talking about aggression, which is something that is ruled by Mars. The planet of Mars rules aggression, rules energy. You see
Hmm.
Mars being situated in her sixth house, right?
Hmm.
One house before than the seventh, right? And since we also give a lot of importance to what house are ruled by Mars, so you can see the 12th house, which has the number 1 in it, right? And the
Okay.
seventh house, which has the number 8 in it.
The MO, the moon one, right?
Moon one, yeah. So these
Okay.
both houses are ruled by Mars. So generally, when you are trying
Mhm.
to find the source of of a possible dysfunction, this is what it helps you with. Um, the 12th house is supposed to be considered a house of um, expenditure, of losses, but spiritually speaking, it's also a house of letting go, being the ability to
Hmm.
let go, right? That is how it works. So if, like, after having after having talked to her for, like, let's say 3 sessions, I could see a pattern that there has been trouble in terms of letting go a lot of things that have happened in the past within the marriage, in general, with interacting with the world. So seventh house, apart from your marriage, like till the point that you are not married, would represent your interaction with the world. And I could, when we were talking, she used to talk about almost everything that hurt her, every the smallest of things, that she held on to, with her
Hmm.
interactions with friends, with family, with any random stranger as well. She used to hold on to it, and she didn't realize that it was fueling her anger. So that is how the connection between the 12th and the 7th house came, and it was, manifesting in the 6th house. It is there in the 6th house, but then the root is much deeper than just where it's showing up, right? So that is how I generally use astrology for. I just use the chart as a tool to deepen my understanding of the person's complexes. Jyotish as a science is very complete and very different in approach, and it gives a lot of results as well. But I personally, I am not here to do that. I am here to help
Hmm.
the client find self sufficiency,
Mm.
right? Over a period of time, when they realize their own chart, they begin their spiritual journey. They have some or the other sort of anchor within the chart. They find a sense of purpose, right? That is my goal. It's not for me to just help them deal with whatever they're going through.
It's more about
So,
addressing the root cause and helping them solve
yes,
at the root level. Nishil, before we proceed further, we have some questions and I'm just going to flash them up here on the
sure.
screen. This is one of the questions that I received. How can early practitioners integrate Indian science in their practices?
Okay. So, I would suggest students who are, pursuing psychology in their bachelor's or their master's, try to uh, explore Indian sciences first, see what resonates with them the most, because there are people. So there's something called Buddhist psychology as well right now in the market, um, and I wouldn't say it's much far off than Indian psychology. It's just that you have to start exploring these fields a bit, and then see what if there are courses, you can go in for courses. If not, then you can try reading the scriptures itself, or look for someone who can help you with that. That's step one. Step two is start, if you already have had clients in the past, try to analyze your notes based on whatever you are reading right now. That could be one of the ways you can go about it. The way I went about it was, um, just a sec. Yeah. The way I went about it was applying everything that I was learning or reading in my life. I think
Okay.
most of the insights that I've had, even in terms of astrology, have been upon deeper investigation of my own chart. The more you introspect
Okay.
about where your complexes come from, um, um, I feel you gain a lot of understanding about, since at the end of the day, human experience, although subjective, is common to all. When we talk about pain, when we talk about emotions, almost every human being feels the same emotion. Just the context of the emotion is different, right? So the more you know yourself, even if you consider it on a soul level, since you can't differentiate souls, so the deeper you
Mm.
know, the deeper you go into investigating your own soul, the more wisdom or the more insights you would gain about the way the world works, right? So, okay, this may sound very abstract. Um,
Okay.
I'm trying to answer your question in a sense which kind of helps the early practitioners as well. So as I said, I'll repeat myself. Step one is always going to be exploring the field of, exploring the Indian sciences first. See what calls out to you. There are 6 schools of thought. If you are into yoga, you can read more texts on yoga. If you feel closer to Vedanta, to Sankhya, you can explore that more. But at least try to do that so that you understand, okay, ये है. पहले तो वो सब read करो so that you understand ये क्या हो रहा है, right? And then step two would be uh, constantly align, like integrating it with whatever you are professionally dealing with or have dealt with. That will give you more confidence as well when you're talking to your clients. And step three would be, that is something that I myself am going through, is that understanding that not all clients will be extremely open about this approach, right? So
How to
because
deal
not,
with that resistance?
yeah, um so you will have clients which have a variety of issues, and not all of them will have issues which have spirit, not all of them will have spiritual questions, right? um One thing that I mentioned it in my talk earlier as well, that maybe not all questions have answers, but every normal question will definitely have a spiritual answer, right?
Okay.
However, if the client is not ready for it, they are not going to accept it. So the way you go about it is, you give the client, you go ahead with your normal psychotherapy. You use these sciences to deeper your understanding about their problem, even though you are not mentioning it to them that, okay, I'm going to be using XYZ for my own understanding, right?
Okay.
As and when you get the time to talk with the client about certain things, just try to add in a bit of what, like, your thought process. If they are not resistant, so it's all about patience. If they are not resistant by 10%, then maybe you can increase it to 11, maybe to 15 in the next session. For me, it has always worked out, because I feel that people are always curious about knowing exactly what's going on with them, and they'll try to grasp onto everything which gives them a solution. Now, as a psychotherapist, your job is not to give them solutions, but to help them understand, to build deeper awareness, and make them more self reliant in how they can find answers for themselves, right? And if you are able to develop this spiritual insight in them, there will be a time where they no longer need you, and that is exactly the goal of any therapeutic journey, right? So
Yes.
I feel that is, at least that is the way I have done it. Also with astrology, as I mentioned, that I mention it to the clients straight away in the beginning, that I use charts to deepen my understanding of what you're going through. If you're comfortable discussing about it, we can do that. If you're not, that's totally fine. I won't mention anything about astrology. I won't mention anything. I anyways won't do any sort of predictions. I won't be doing any sort of astrological remedies. But if you are interested in terms of where it's coming, so you have to kind of add some sort of attractiveness or mysticism to the entire process, so that they become a bit curious about it, right? It's
Got
up
it.
to you. You have to deliver it in a way wherein they become kind of curious about it, and then it becomes a very good journey together. And you learn equally from the client and their spiritual journey as much as they do from you. So I think that is the way I have done it so far, and it has been working out for me.
That's really glad to hear. And this whole conversation, around integrating the whole Indian, I would say, Indian psychology with the Western psychology also brings me to a point that, mental health in general cannot be binary or just some labels that we usually tend to give, which has, I think, led to more of the stigma than,
Hmm.
solving for the problem. How
Definitely.
how do you think, and these early practitioners who are getting into the field, while there are a lot of other modalities,
Hmm.
that they can get supervision for, right? But I mean, at least I haven't come across some from, like, come across many folks who do give. Is there a supervision possible when you're trying to do an integration of this sort, or it's something that you just like explore on your own? How does that work?
No, it's possible. I feel that, you know, as you said, there are not a lot of people who are doing this as of now. So it would be difficult to find uh, people jiske saath supervision would be possible. Uh, but one way to get around it for the time being is at least be in touch with people who are practicing it. And if you have any doubts, just be open about it. So let's say, for
Hmm.
example, tomorrow there are people who approach me asking possible insights about the clients that they are having, or even personal insights. um, then just having a discussion itself would help them gain a lot of knowledge about this, right? I think at least start with that, because if you try to quantify every possible thing of your therapeutic not therapeutic practice, then it defeats the purpose of integrating, right? That's one. Two is, I feel that the beauty of this approach is that you can play on your strengths. When I talk about integrating Indian sciences, it does not have to be just spiritual sciences. I have a friend who has tried to attempt integrating classical Indian dance with psychotherapy as well. In terms of
Okay.
helping people express their emotions in a much creative way. Now, although on paper or like in its appearance it may not seem spiritual, but this is the most spiritual thing you can do. It's something that our gods used to do as well, like dancing to release emotions, any strong emotions. So it's the beauty of integration is that you do not have to be limited to a particular um, philosophy or a science. It's all about finding strength in whatever, uh, finding meaning in whatever strengths you have and integrating it. If you have a calling, if you feel that the kind of psychotherapy that I want to practice is to have it integrated with, let's say, music, do it. It might work out for you, right? There are a lot of modalities. There's classical raga therapy. There's a lot right now in the market. And okay, an important distinction here, I just realized, is to be made between integration of these sciences and just using those sciences as a replacement for therapy, which is not possible. When I explained, so
Can you explain that
yeah,
further?
there are people claiming benefits of therapy that can be gained by, let's say, music therapy or art therapy, XYZ. The process could be therapeutic, but what psychotherapy has to offer cannot be replaced. If you are going through a dysfunction in life, जिसका फंडामेंटल इशू है अगर लाइफ में, तो उसको एड्रेस करने के लिए साइकोथेरेपी इज द बेस्ट थिंग दैट यू कैन गो फॉर. Yes, you can integrate these other sciences to make it more lucrative, to make it um, maybe more streamlined, to make it work for you and the client both, but it can never replace the whole psychotherapy ka journey. Similarly, as when I explained about astrology, Jyotish
Hmm.
is a complete science in itself. But if someone is coming to me with an issue which they want to address, not just obviously, a lot of clients won't even know if they need to address it on a
Hmm.
like in a temporary way or in general, but something that helps them make helps self sufficiency. Astrology is going to help them with most of their issues. But उनको जो self sufficient बनना है, अगर using their own awareness in order to deal with issues future में, वो psychotherapy ही दे पाएगा ना उनको. They may have to take therapy again. I'm
Hmm.
not discounting that fact. I'm not saying that it's like the best possible thing that you could do, but at least you'll have more faith in your own capacity to
Hmm.
deal with issues of the world. So
So, if I'm
yeah,
understanding, sorry, go ahead, please, go ahead.
no, that's it.
So, from what I'm understanding, is that all of these practices, if in their as a standalone, will not might or might not have that larger impact on the client, but when they're integrated and delivered to the client and used in that during that therapeutic practice, that tends to have a larger and more positive impact on the client's journey, right? That's
Y-
if I had to summarize that
Yes,
piece
I
of
think
the.
yeah, you summarized it perfectly. That's exactly what I was trying to say.
So this brings me to the next part of the whole conversation, Nishal, that is in the hypnotherapy piece. I've been actually following, I guess, some creators, um, Instagram or on YouTube, who are
Mhm,
into hypnotherapy, who do give out these audios of hypnotherapy.
mhm,
I just want to understand from you today firsthand, like, what exactly is hypnotherapy? Do these audios really help us? Or
Mm.
it's something that won't? How can one go about it?
So, hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy is basically a tool wherein, as a practitioner, you help the client go into a much relaxed state of mind. Um and by doing that, it opens up the possibility of helping them either deal with certain dysfunction in their life, phobias, or enhancing performance in certain areas of their life as well. It could also be used for spiritual purpose. It could be, so there's something called past life regression as well. Maybe that's a conversation for a different time. uh, but yeah, so now there is a lot of taboo in terms of hypnosis and hypnotherapy,
Hmm.
because I would say there are three levels, not three levels, but three types of hypnosis that we generally know about. One is stage hypnosis, jahan pe, there are people, they call on the stage, and then you say you'll forget that you were a human being and you are maybe a dog and start
Yeah.
barking, things like that, right? That's not therapeutic. We won't be exploring that. On the other hand of the continuum, you have Vashikaran, which is a tantric practice. Again, that is something that a lot of people uh, confuse hypnotherapy with. Vashikaran is where a person can gain control over someone else's mind. That is not something that we as clinical hypnotherapists do. It's not something that we can possibly do as well, because we do not have that capacity, right? Now, coming to our actual topic, which is clinical hypnotherapy, first of all, it can only be possible after both therapist and the client, they've agreed कि, okay, this is something we'll be going ahead with. Number one. Number two, at every point during the session, the client is in control. ऐसा नहीं है कि they do not have control over whatsoever is happening, right? That is in extreme cases that happens, like point something percent में ऐसा होता है, right? And lastly, uh, the agreed intention is to just direct it towards whatever the goal is, right? So let's
Okay.
say I have a client tomorrow, and she says that, she has, let's say, hydrophobia, and that has been um, impeding her from living out her life in the way that she wants to.
Hmm.
um, So, in order to help her with the phobia, I suggest hypnotherapy. She asks me about hypnotherapy, and I repeat everything that I just told you, right? And then, if she agrees to go ahead with it, then, as we do with normal therapy case sessions, I would take like a brief case history to understand where is this possible phobia
Hmm.
coming from. I would also check the chart. I'll come to that. Um, and then ask about certain other phobias if she has some, in order to avoid using that imagery during the session of inducing
To avoid
trance.
the triggers.
Yeah. So after that is done, then we come to the actual session. Now my sessions range from around an hour to an hour and a half, right?
Okay.
We start with a basic test of hypnosis. It's less of a test, it's more of like, going to the baby pool before you jump to the actual swimming pool for the client, so that they get a taste
Hmm.
of what it would feel like, and they feel a bit comfortable, because a lot of clients have that anxiety ki kya hoga, how am I supposed
Hmm.
to behave during the session. So it
Hmm.
helps them be at ease, basically. So that is I follow it with a bit of normal talking. And
Okay.
there's something called indirect hypnosis, wherein you use certain words which will help them within their actual hypnosis session as well. So there are certain as you said, certain triggers, but you use positive triggers which can help them get better, basically. So after that,
Okay.
you actually perform the session, which consists of an induction, a possible deepener, and certain imagery. So there's some sort of visualization. Now, depending on the client, there are different scripts. You generally tend to make custom made scripts for the clients, and then it's I would say, based on the kind of reactions that you are getting from the client, you decide to either uh, cut the session short or maybe explore something more. And then once you end it, you let the client relax for a bit and explore about what happened when they were in trance, if they feel comfortable about that. If they don't, then maybe take it up in the next session. One thing to make sure, like we have to do, is that reorient them to the present. Almost every client that I have tried, uh, not tried, obviously we reorient them, but they've ended up laughing when I ask them questions like, what is your name, where are you, what is today's date, because they feel that, we've had such a deep experience, and then we've come back to someone just asking us what is my name. So they just end up laughing. So that's just something that I'm always amused. Yeah, okay, so moving on. That's how a general hypnotherapy session looks like. One thing that I was going to mention was the use of the chart. So as I do with my therapy, I use the chart to understand what might be the possible root of an issue. Even if we are working towards something positive, let's say that athletic performance पे hypnotherapy session ले रहे
Hmm.
हैं, तो generally athleticism is ruled by Mars. So based on the
Okay.
placement of their Mars, what is the possible imagery I can create for them, which might work the most for their subconscious. So that is how I use it, right?
Got it.
Because as a hypnotherapist, you take certain calls by yourself. Okay, possibly this imagery would work for them because of the history that they have, like based on the case history. That works. But if you also look at the chart, it gives you additional information as to what you can use during the session, right? That is why I use it. So
Got it.
that's hypnotherapy in a nutshell.
This brings me to a very, I think, an important question that's, I guess, for everyone who has ever thought of therapy, I guess, because like internet is right now flooded with different therapy modalities. Like there are 10,000
Yes.
types of therapy today existing.
Yes.
How can someone really decide if hypnotherapy is for them or not, or if what type any of the therapeutic models, which one is it that they could prefer, that they should prefer?
Hmm. Okay, so first, answering your first question, hypnotherapy is just a tool. Like, it cannot, yeah, it cannot replace an entire therapeutic journey, because it's something you give in one session, right? You could also
Okay.
have multiple sessions of hypnotherapy, but उसके पहले और उसके बाद में जो normal talk therapy है, that is mandatory. You cannot just have sporadic sessions of hypnotherapy and
Okay.
just leave the client and like just have no closure at all, so it's less about, like there's less responsibility, less pleasure, less pressure on the shoulders of the client, as to deciding if hypnotherapy is for them or not, because it's something that a therapist will ask. Let's say during a normal therapeutic journey, uh, I ask my clients if they feel that they would like to address this XYZ particular issue with hypnotherapy. Now, that is a call that I make based on my experience, A, and B, based on what they are facing. So, like, phobia is something that is extremely effective when it comes to hypnotherapy, anger management as well, right? Certain psychosomatic issues as well. So, it's totally up to the therapist. And then the ball is in the court of the client. If they feel comfortable enough, fine, they'll go ahead with it. If they don't, that's totally fine as well. there is no love lost if you reject hypnotherapy as a part of the solution offered by the therapist, right? If it works for you, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So you're not losing out on the therapeutic journey. Coming to the second part of your question, I feel that if a client is possibly looking for the type of therapy that works for them, if they are looking at therapy which have such integrative models like I do, they can go for models jahan pe things that they are interested in are integrated with normal therapy, right? Because
Okay.
they would feel more comfortable, they would feel more interested in doing it regularly, because at the end of the day, any therapeutic journey has to have some sort of consistency for it to work, right?
Hmm.
So you choose anything where you feel you'd be safe, you'd be willing to continue it. At the end of the day, your like the therapist also matters, because not every therapist would be tailor fit for your needs or the kind of therapy you need. So it's totally fine. I feel that's why there's an importance to have like an introductory call of like, let's say, 10-15 minutes, so that you understand okay, what I'm signing up for. And as long as you're keeping that free for the client, it builds more confidence in them. Okay, like, okay, I can maybe explore a lot of therapists and then decide whichever suits me the best. And that's totally, I think that is the approach you can take. One thing that I would like to focus on, though, uh, every client that you meet, or every person who you meet who wants to seek therapy, one thing to tell them to look out for is proper credentials, right?
Hmm.
In terms of like people who have done their masters, or people who have done their postgraduate diplomas, unke paas jao. Like, ask for credentials when you are seeking for therapy. Do not just start and then complain, right? I mean, obviously the people who are practicing it are equally at fault, but then at least as clients, you can ask for proper qualifications. If it's just a 3 month certificate course that you've done on counseling, it's not going to equip you well enough with dealing. There are people who have done masters and yet they are miserable therapists. So people, like, you can understand where I'm coming at, right?
Yeah, I
So
can. I
mm,
understand.
yeah.
Nishu, so as we are kind of, coming closer to the end of the session, there's one more question that's just like popping in my head as you were talking about, in the last piece about introductory call and,
Mm,
so that the client can understand perhaps what is it if the therapist is right, if they're right fit for each other, more of a compatibility check, right? But I've
right.
spoken to like a lot of practitioners, and a common notion that I've gotten is that clients do tend to like take that 15 minutes ka session as a full therapy session more than being an introductory call session. So what are certain things or questions that I as a client can ask to the
Mm.
potential therapist, whoever I am booking a 15 minutes introductory call with?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of modify this question,
Okay.
because the responsibility here does not lie with the client, because the client is
Okay.
helpless, they are trying to seek help, right? So you do not know anything about the mental health journey if you are a newcomer.
Mm.
As
Mm.
therapists, most therapists need training with setting healthy boundaries, even within
Mm.
their professional lives, right? When people share that, there are clients who just take it as an excuse to keep on talking about their issues, you have to keep reminding them, you have to keep telling them, you have to start with that, you have to tell them, "Okay, this is going to be an introductory call where it's just basic information shared so that you understand the kind of therapy I give. If you are ready for it,
Okay.
if you feel comfortable with me, then we move on and we have our actual session." So what you do is, let's say you've talked for like 15 minutes, and then the client keeps talking about, okay, but you know ये हो रहा है and ये भी हो रहा है. One thing that I have learned is, you know, the way I use humor is I tell them, okay, you seem extremely comfortable with me. Like our 15 minutes are over and I feel that, you know, time has just gone by. I think that we are a good match and maybe we can have like actual sessions. What do you feel about it? If they say yes, then you say terrific. Let us just book it then. You know, let's just
Yeah.
work, book an appointment or schedule how our sessions are going to be. So you have to take control from time to time. One thing that has something that has been kind of frowned upon, because like counseling mein they say ki client centered therapy is a cornerstone of modern day counseling, like the Rogerian style of counseling, and usme you allow the client to set the pace of the whole session. Yes, for the most part it should be like that, but when you are supposed to uh, develop healthy boundaries, if you're supposed to be set an example to the client, they are not going to learn if you are letting them walk over your boundaries, right? So you have to take
Yeah.
charge of that. So, but again, trying to answer your actual question, um, again, you one thing to ask about, like something that's important is the qualification, how payments would be scheduled, how the sessions would be scheduled. I think that is the most important thing. Everything else is generally discussed, you know, but this is something that you as a client you need to be clear on कि, okay, week में कितने sessions होंगे या month में कितने sessions होंगे, what's the possible costing, uh, am I being charged for cancellation, what is the time जिसके पहले मैं cancel कर पाऊंगी. Generally as a therapist you're supposed to provide them with like a full
Hmm.
disclosure form. If they don't do that, then as a client you should be asking. But again, as I said, it's not your responsibility to check on all this, because you're already going with a troubled mindset. So वो
Yeah.
उस therapist का काम है ये सब करना, right? So when people ask me कि, as a client, what should I expect from my first therapy session, I always tell them, don't expect anything. You just show up and be as authentic and honest with yourself and the therapist as possible. Rest of it will be taken care of by the therapist if they are good. If not, then you choose a different therapist. I mean, I have to be as honest as possible, right?
Yeah, this just does remind me of my first therapy session when I was asked to go for one. I was like, what am I supposed to talk? What is it
Yeah,
going to be? And then I
yeah.
just like show up and I'm like, dekh lenge jo bhi hoga.
Hmm.
We have a question, by the way, from the audience. Does hypnotherapy work if the client knows about placebo?
Yeah, it does. See, the whole concept of placebo is something that fuels the science of hypnotherapy. Like when you talk about uh, how significant placebo effect is, you have studies जिसमें वो add किया जाता है so that you can rule out its effect to see the actual you know validity of if you're testing a drug, let's say. So you realize the how strong your mind can be in terms of resolving issues or creating issues that can impact your body, right? We deal with psychosomatic symptoms as well as hypnotherapists, and if they know about the placebo effect, it helps them all the more because they recognize the connection between mind and body. If I know that, you know, if I keep saying I'm getting thinner, okay, this is, again, I have to kind of explain a bit regarding this. There's a difference between affirmations that people talk about and
Hmm.
visualization, right? Affirmations is when you are repeating a statement, that's it does not work for most people. It makes them feel like shit, right? But affirmations where you're actually believing in what you're saying and visualizing it at the same time will help you move closer towards the goal that you are talking about. right? So that is where the placebo effect comes. If you just believe, because whenever you are in hypnotherapy, your conscious mind is off, right? It's just
Hmm.
your subconscious. Now your subconscious does not know right from wrong, does not know anything about what time it is. There's nothing going on. It talks in stories. Anything that feels good, that's it, right? So if it works, it doesn't matter if your client believes in placebo or not. Maybe during the course of normal therapy, placebo would be a hampering factor because the client would think a lot, but hypnotherapy may you are shutting off their conscious mind, so it does not matter, if that answers your question.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting take. And actually, there was something that I also had in mind that I think
Mhm.
I can very well gauge if something is a placebo or not. And or like, if someone's just I'm trying to fool my mind. I'm just like way too aware to know that I am fooling my mind, and then I just can't continue fooling my mind. So yeah, this is a very interesting take on the whole hypnotherapy piece. So as we're
Mhm.
coming to the end of it, Nishil, are there any last pointers that you would like to share with the audience?
Mm, Again, I would just stress on the importance of exploring our cultural sciences that have always existed when you are dealing with any, like, especially for young psychologists, when you are studying, you're doing your normal course, do take out some time to read about what our scriptures talk about. You may not require to be interested in religion. You can take spiritual texts, you can read about Upanishads, anything that you feel is not related to religion, because there are a lot of people who are anti-religion right now. It's a whole
Hmm.
movement, that's a different thing. But and if you feel that maybe you do not want to dig deeper into Indian culture per se, there are a lot of non non-cultural spiritual books as well, so you can start by reading that. uh, I feel just exploring your field more, that is where you will be able to find your place and find an integration of therapy that works for you the best. Because in order to provide the therapy which can transform lives, you need to be in sync with what you're providing. If you're
Hmm.
not, you'll always feel incomplete. And as a therapist, you are supposed to represent alignment. It may not be the case in your personal life, but at least in your professional life, because your client will mirror that subconsciously.
Hmm.
So if you are feeling that something is insufficient in what you are providing, or if you are not confident about what you're providing, they will catch up to it. That is what I believe in. I think that are my final thoughts uh, of, yeah, like, just concluding everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nishil, for coming in and sharing your experience of this whole. I think we touched on various topics except for just, including, of course, astrology and Indian science and the integration of all these. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this information,
Thank
your
you. I
experience rather with us. Thank you.
Mhm. No, thank you for providing me with an opportunity I've been searching for so long, because I feel that it needs to be put out there for young practitioners who are lost right now trying to figure it out, and also for students studying psychology who feel something that I used to feel, that something feels incomplete with just the Western approach of the science. So yeah, it's just to give them more confidence that there are a lot of things that you can explore and find your place in the field. So yeah, thank you for giving me that opportunity as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.